Welcome to part 2 of the history of Branch Motor Express Company. In this video, I'll showcase all the companies that Branch acquired through the years from the 1950s to the 1970s. Before getting started, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. For years, Branch had roots as a small regional carrier in New York City, radiating to north and western New Jersey, southeastern Pennsylvania, and south to Baltimore and Washington, D.C. That changed in 1960 with the purchase of McCormick Transportation Incorporated. Meeting Branch at Philadelphia and New York City, it added Wilmington, Delaware, Jersey City, New Jersey, and now into Boston, Massachusetts. By acquiring McCormick, it added 25 trucks, 55 tractors, and 62 trailers to its fleet. Murdoch and Hatch Motor Transport was an interesting acquisition that was practically handed to Branch courtesy of the Interstate Commerce Commission. Murdoch and Hatch was a money-losing carrier that was already in bankruptcy. Another trucking company named A.B.&C Transportation had been leasing M&H for several months and had already been approved by the ICC to make the purchase. However, A.B.&C became bankrupt themselves before the acquisition could be finalized. Rather than let the business of Murdoch and Hatch go away and take jobs with it, the ICC approved letting Branch buy M&H. In addition, the new routes would complement the Branch system by adding terminals in New Haven, Connecticut. The ICC knew Branch was in solid financial footing. Murdoch and Hatch operated between Boston and New York City, familiar territory to Branch. Included were 15 straight trucks, 51 tractors, and 42 dry freight trailers and 22 refrigerated trailers. During the same time Branch was establishing itself as a formidable carrier in the Northeast, the South was emerging as an industrial center. Just take a look at that route map. From origins of hauling freight from the Reading, Pennsylvania area to New York City, now Branch ran between Boston, Massachusetts to South Carolina. To get into the Carolinas, they acquired Morgan Trucking Company of Greensboro, North Carolina. Due to the longer distance, Branch ran driver teams in cab-over sleeper engine tractors based out of Greensboro. Before gaining approval from the ICC to buy Morgan, quite a few established carriers already operating from the Carolinas to the Northeast sought to block the approval. But Branch won out, and now Branch was solidly in the South. Branch acquired Rogers Motor Lines, which added routes in Pennsylvania, New York, and into Buffalo. Now that those states were fully covered, the next acquisition would take Branch further westward. Middle Atlantic Transportation was based in New Britain, Connecticut, and ran between Boston, Massachusetts, and Detroit, Michigan, through New York, Pennsylvania, and Ohio. Their largest terminals were in Cleveland and Detroit, but their traffic was unbalanced in one way. They needed help, and even in the 1950s was a much bigger company than Branch. Now, in the late 1960s, Branch wanted to buy the company. After several years of managing Middle Atlantic, Branch got the approval from the ICC. Further westward would be the direction that Branch Motor Express would take when they acquired Motor Freight Corporation of Terre Haute, Indiana. This purchase would bring routes through Indiana and west to Omaha, Nebraska, St. Louis, Missouri, and finally into Chicago and Louisville. Among the biggest acquisition for Branch was about to be made in the mid-1970s when they bought Great Lakes Express of Saginaw, Michigan. Great Lakes, or GLX as it was called, was a large north-south carrier from Michigan to Atlanta, giving Branch territory that it didn't have and routes through Michigan. Branch got all the routes from the Ohio north and sold the southern routes to another carrier. The trucking industry was deregulated with the signing of the National Motor Carrier Act of 1980. One of the aspects of the law was carriers such as Branch being forced to write off the value of those valuable operating rights that controlled the trucking industry since 1935. Branch survived with cost and wage cuts from employers from another 4 years. However, Branch was losing money every year now and could not compete with the lower cost structure of all the new trucking firms now able to enter the industry. In August 1984, the major bank lender of Branch called the millions of dollars of debt due and payable. Branch could not pay the loan and shut down. The end of a trucking company whose green trucks had traveled the highways for many years was over. That's a concise history of the acquisition and companies that Branch Motor Express made through the years. For additional details,